Growing a Leader, Melissa Major, Nursing 532. For as far back as I can remember, I always had the desire of growing up and being a nurse. My grandmother and mother were both nurses, and it seemed like there was always some type of stethoscope or other medical gear lying around. I always seemed to find them and play with my dolls and dream of one day growing up and following in their footsteps. The giving tree was a gift I'd received from a relative as a small child, and it has always been dear to my heart. I recall thinking about the feeling I had as I read that book and the spirit of giving, and decided at an early age that I too wanted to be like that tree and have a heart to give back to those around me. Although, as I have went through my years of nursing, I have come to realize that they have given me by far more than I could have ever given unto them. The geriatric population is the population that I've spent the majority of my nursing with, and I've always had a special connection with them, and that is my desire to carry forward with my nurse practitioner degree. My nursing education began in 2004 with my associate's degree. I went back and received my bachelor's degree, and most recently I'm in a nurse practitioner program at Boise State University, getting my adult gerontology degree. Of note, I have recently been doing some volunteer time at the free clinic in Boise, Idaho, the Friendship Clinic. It has been an eye-awakening experience that I have honestly enjoyed far more than any other type of nursing I've ever done. And one day I would too like to have my own free clinic. When I first became a nurse, I started out in a hospital in a cardiac step-down unit. After a year there, I realized it wasn't a good fit for me and found myself down a dirt road, which is pretty much where I grew up. I grew up in a very small town in the South, and I delved out into those very roads to try home health nursing, and ended up in Georgia. I did a lot of rural health there. Some of the homes I went into didn't have running waters or toilets or even floors, some of them, and went into a lot of places most people would run out of. But that's where I stayed for 10 years, and I've never seen another population of people that were so grateful and so endearing, and with the lack of pretension that most people do not even realize exist in this day and time. And I will serve them to the day I die. That is my favorite population of nursing. I had a wonderful experience and a not so wonderful time. My hometown is right outside of New Orleans, Louisiana. Hurricane Katrina devastated that area, and at the time I was a nurse and got to go back and give disaster relief to people that were going through the hardest time in their life. It was not just me, someone that used to live there, but it was me, a nurse with a skill that I'd earned and practiced and was ready to give and was able to give, and it was definitely an altering point in my career. I found when I moved to Idaho with my spouse, which is in the military, a critical access hospital, and it seemed like it was a great culmination of a hospital setting, yet there was a lot of rural health and community care there within that place and that one setting. This is where I worked up until last year when I started my master's program with Boise State. So the growth process, as we see a seedling here, starts out as a seed and pushes its way through the soil up and down, and it's a strenuous process. It has been a lot of work, a lot of effort, but as this quote says, all of that effort and all we're going through, something's growing, and that's us. Each and every one of us that are in this program right now will not come out the same as we were when we entered it, and that's just something to keep in mind as we go through all of our struggles, and know that there will be great success and great reward when we are done. The vision statement that I have created for my practice The foundation being where empathy and skill mend hearts and ills. And the picture here is actually a road in a town close to my hometown in southern Louisiana. And this was actually sadly disabled before Katrina. But this is, how I envision home and how I want people to be comforted and to be comfortable and to feel like they can just be themselves, that they don't have to worry about being judged, and that they will have the utmost of skill provided to them as well, as I base my practice on the latest in evidence-based care and therapy. My anticipated patient population will be geriatric, underserved. I would love to have an ALF one-day assisted living facility and ultimately spend some time abroad doing Doctors Without Borders. Up until this point in my career, which has been 12 years, I have without a doubt gleaned from every single environment that I've been in. Every patient that I've encountered has shaped me in one way or the other to be a better nurse, either to know what not to do or what to do better next time, or what to continue to do and refine. This next endeavor is going to be no different as I start out again in the workforce as the newbie as a nurse practitioner. I've kept in mind some things that will help me build that next part of my life. Networking prior to graduation, I believe, is fundamental for all of us since we're all at the same point in our careers. Quickly establishing a mentor in my first position that I have as a nurse practitioner. I do religiously keep up with periodical subscriptions up to date. The Prescriber's Newsletter is a wonderful journal that comes out with all of the things that have changed in the past 30 days as far as what is recommended, or what new drugs are out, or what drugs have been recalled, and so forth, as well as involvement in all the departments of the facility that I'm a part of, just to have your hand in seeing where different parts of the business are taken care of. One of the jobs I'd had along my path in my career had a cross-training program, and I thought it was one of the most educational pieces to that job, because for once I was given the opportunity to see from each different department's perspective what they were contributing and what they were doing, instead of being ignorant. That way, when I went back to the place that I did work full-time, I knew how it all fit together, and I could therefore respect and not be so quick to judge other departments, because I understood that part of the business. And I think this is a critical point going into a brand new practice, is seeing how it all fits together. Part of assuming my role as a nurse practitioner in a leadership managerial position, which will be totally new to me, is the appraisal and growth aspect, where I have been the one being appraised in the past. I will now be the one doing it. I have learned a lot in my leadership class this semester, and one of the things has been specifically about the appraisal process of employees. The entire concept of the appraisal is to help evaluate on a recurrent basis growth or deficit, and needs for improvement, or if it's accolades that should be given, then therefore kudos to the employees that have done well. And I believe this is a much more important aspect of it, is to encourage. And then the things that maybe need to be worked on, you can have a growth plan that's formulated, and that they can, it's a good time point for the supervisor and those supervised to come together with a consensus for documentation. That way it's in the chart and in the record. And that there can be a goal, something to look forward to, something to work towards, and to keep people focused on the same vision. Some of the tips that I've learned personally, as I was the one being appraised and throughout my leadership class, have been: number one, that it should always be in a non-punitive environment. This, personally, I know is a huge factor in honesty and forthcomingness in reports of injury and reports of error, is to make sure that it is well known amongst the peers that it is a non-punitive environment for them, so they don't have to worry about getting in trouble. that it's all for policy change or for maybe learning where a policy needs to be put into place. It's all for safety, ultimately, of our patients and ourselves. It should be a place where discussion's encouraged, that your intention is constructive to build up, to set goals. Self-auditing, I think, is a wonderful way for a patient, employee to assess their own life, assess their own behavior, assess their own weaknesses and strengths, and then their performance appraisal built upon that. That way it keeps the appraiser and that one appraised out of a competitive stance, and it's non-confrontational, and basically the employee is setting his own goals and of course being encouraged and assisted by his supervisor. So what our desired fruit of this appraisal process is that we will have motivated and satisfied employees, that the supervisor and subordinate will recognize and agree upon individual training and developmental needs, and that we are getting a good feel for the recruitment and induction practices that we currently have in play at the practice. Some of the pitfalls that are noted that need to be avoided are where we tend to compartmentalize the appraisal process as an isolated event instead of continually keeping this mindset throughout the entire year with the employee and the employer. Also, the mutual agreement is a huge key to success, so we need to make sure that everyone's on the same page. There needs to be open communication. You need to make sure that each of you are understanding the other. We need to refrain from playing judge or having a bias in the situation, or a vested interest on the other flip of the coin is to try to look good on paper, therefore minimizing a subordinate's weaknesses, because that's not going to help either of you in the long run. Quality improvement is naturally the thing that would follow your performance appraisal, so these are the things you need to work on, and this is what we're going to do to work on them. We are a unit and we want to be strong, and this is a good quote. It says, "Honor bespeaks worth, confidence begets trust, and service brings satisfaction. Cooperation proves the quality of leadership." A good leader is someone that you want to cooperate with. It's someone you want to give quality to, and that's what we're ultimately looking for. Some of the examples we're going to use for this information are going to emanate from the performance reports, the financial management aspects, utilization of resources, patient outcomes, as well as the socioeconomic environmental factors of where our practice is. And taking root, so we're in that new practice, we are assuming our new role as leaders, and we are beginning to grow, and we want to make sure that we are strong. We want to make sure that we are producing good fruit. We want to make sure that we are providing for our communities the very best that we can. One of the things that I really was impressed by, that I feel like is manageable for me in the beginning of my practice, will be the PDCA model. Also LEAN, which is an acronym of a process of resource management that I have been a part of in the past. And then last, I want to look at on the horizon. So what is the PDCA model? It's also known as the deeming cycle. It's a model of logical sequence of 4 repetitive steps for continuous quality improvement and learning. It is plan, do, check, act. And this is a cyclic. If you look at it, it's a circle. It's like a wheel. And if you think of it, just continually moving forward, which is what we want to do in our practices, which is what we have to do. Medicine is a dynamic field. It is ever changing. We need to continually be looking circumspect our practice all around, planning, doing, checking, acting. And that's how we keep it moving forward. The actual steps of the cycle are: plan ahead for change, analyze and predict the results. Do, this is the execution of the plan, taking small steps in controlled circumstances. Study, check, study the results. Act is to take action to standardize or improve the process, which is the ultimate goal of this cycle. And then start all over again. You're looking in all areas of your practice, and if you're not finding anything, then you're just not looking hard enough, because there are always areas for improvement. There's always areas that need to evolve into new practices, into new policies, into growth, into doing things better from poor outcomes in the past, and to doing things better to get better outcomes, even if they weren't poor in the past. And this is how we can promise that this is continually happening, is to keep the cycle in place. Lean is an acronym that is basically, it's to maximize customer value while minimizing waste. And the ultimate goal is to provide perfect value to the customer through a perfect value creation process that has zero waste. This is eliminating waste along the entire value stream. It creates processes that need less human effort, less space, less capital, less time. Basically, this was in place at a previous employer I was with, and it's a system that the supply companies, the supply department of the hospital had in place, where there were stop gaps so that everyone knew and was on the same page with all of our resources that we had at hand, to minimize the waste of those resources, to minimize the expiration of medications, to minimize the over-ordering of items that would then expire, to minimize basically ordering the wrong things and so forth. But it was across the hospital setting, and everyone was aware of it, which was, I believe, the key to the success of that process. On the horizon, so one of the main things that I wanted to stress in closing is that as we are the mentors, as we are the mentees rather, we need to keep in mind from that very point of being the one grafted into our mentors, that one day we are going to be the mentors to the future nurse practitioner students that come our way. And with that vision is how we keep moving forward in our healthcare, in the field of healthcare, and in the field of best medicine and in best practice. The frequent communication of latest evidence-based practice is the backbone of any good practice. We need to make sure that we are continually making ourselves aware of any changes, and that we are continually evaluating results and outcomes within our patient population, so that we can make sure that we aren't missing something, and that we can give the very best to our patients, because that's what we're here for. And projected growth plans for all team members, including ourselves. We can't leave ourselves out of this. We are basically the example in the environment. We need to make sure that we all have a goal ahead, that we're all working towards it, that we're encouraging, that we're doing whatever we can for one another so that we can achieve these goals, and that we celebrate with one another when we do. This is encouragement. This is just part of the natural psyche that will perpetuate the actions that cause the growth to begin with. So, the true meaning of life is to plant trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit. At one time, I was that little tree, that little sapling we all were, all of us in this program. We were being shaded by our mentors, and we became the ones mentoring as RNs, and here we are. Saplings again, we're in a different forest, and yes, we are being shaded. We will have mentors that we cling to, that we look to, and thankfully we have that. That's a key to our success, is finding those people that we can be a part of their lives, be a part of their practices, that we go to, that we can trust and confide in and learn from. And then ultimately, the cycle will continue, and we will be those trees once again that will mentor those behind us. And the cycle continues. This is Sophia Major class, high school class of 2026. Looks like the cycle will go on one more generation, and there's someone following in my footsteps. Thank you very much.